Hey everyone, it's Brenda, and I am attempting to give you some sort of a video to go along with chapter 11 in the book. And today is a day that I am at home working and just realized I don't have my Illustrator book. So I'm going to go off of a bit of memory. The fortunate thing with this chapter is that I think the book is excellent walking you through it. There's not a lot of confusion. What we're dealing with today is brushes, the different kinds of brushes, and the bottom line gist is that brushes can be applied after the fact to existing paths. And you can see in our artboard one, we have a bunch of pink paths here, and we have this purple path, and we can click on them and apply a brush to them after the fact, or we can actually use the brush tool and set it up with a brush and do both at the same time. Create the path with the brush stroke all at once. So a couple of things that I know we need to know about are the brush window. So under Windows or Window brushes, this is something that you're going to want to have turned on. And in the book, it talks about viewing them one at a time. So right now we're seeing all the different brushes that are loaded by default. And just like color swatches, brushes that you add to this document are specific to this document only. So if you go into the library down here at the bottom and you find a brush that you want to use and you load it into this window, it's only going to be available for this document. You know, to use it on another document, you'd have to reload it or save it to your cloud library. So one of the first things they have us do is go up to this menu up here at the top of your brushes window. And because there's a check mark next to all of these, they're all being shown in this panel. And we're also seeing a thumbnail view. So we kind of see what the brush actually looks like. So we're going to turn them off, and unfortunately you have to do it one by one. We're going to leave on the calligraphy brushes, but we're going to turn off these other brushes, and you have to keep going up to the menu to turn them off. But at this point we're down to just the calligraphy brushes, and we see the preview. And if you want to see the list view to actually see what they're called, this is where you do that. So in the menu, you can do thumbnail or list view. I don't remember the exacts, but I do know that we take one of these pink paths right here, and because we want to apply this to all of our pink paths, we do something like select everything that has the same, and I'm going to say stroke color because these are all hot pink and that appears to be the only thing in this document. And yep, sure enough, that selected them all. So if you want to apply a brush to these existing paths, we simply need to come into our brushes panel and pick one. And again, I don't entirely remember, so yeah, 40 point flat seems about right. However, I think we change it to white. So clicking on the stroke icon, and actually it's not even white, it's this fourth chip. Oh, it is white. Or is it this one? Nope, it's white. Doing this from memory. Later in the book, you use the water swatch when we actually make some waves down here, and that's this one that looks transparent. But yes, we use the white stroke, and then I think they talk about dropping down the opacity. So we're going to kind of make this look like, you know, wind or something going through here. So that's one version. They talk you through editing a brush. And just as a sample, I'm going to show you how to do that. What we do is we double click on the thumbnail over here. So where it says 40 point flat, if we wanted to change that, we double click on it and we get this window that pops up. And in this point, we can change the angle of our brush, the roundness, the size. So I'm going to make this smaller. I'll make it, I don't know, 30 point. Or 25. You can also change how the angle behaves. If it's random, it's going to spin around and it shows you here what random would look like. If you choose fixed on the angle, it's going to stay in that one position. If you want to see a preview of how that would look on the strokes where the 40 point flat brush had been applied, which is these, you can click on the preview and see a large preview here. Take this, just play around with this. But then once you do that, you'd obviously want to rename this because this is no longer the 40 point flat. So I don't know, I'm just going to call it 25-point test. And again, the book walks you through specifics. So when we say okay, we get a warning that pops up. And basically what it's asking is, do you want to leave the strokes that had this 40-point flat applied to it as they were and just have this brush now replace this in our options? Or do you want to apply that new brush that you made to the strokes where the 40-point flat had been? In this case, we want to leave the 40-point as it was. We're going to choose Leave Strokes. And then notice it replaced that brush that we had there. It edited it and totally changed it to be our new brush. So now if we were to apply that to just one of these paths, our new test brush, that's what it would look like. Just as an example, and I just did an undo on that. Some other things that it walks you through doing. So that's applying it to a path that exists. What you can also do is use the brush tool. And when we use the brush tool, we can set up our brush before we start. So if we wanted to use a 25-point, or let's do a, I don't even know. Let's do this 25-point test brush, but we're going to set it up with a fill called Water. And we're going to make it a little bit bigger. And I'm going to put the opacity all the way back up. So we've selected the brush, we've told it how to behave over here in the Appearance panel. And now when we bring our cursor into our artboard, we see that there's an asterisk next to the brush. That simply means that we can start painting. And there's an example of what it looks like. If I did a 3-point oval and painted with that, that's what it would look like. So a couple of things to note are you can select the brush and how it's going to look and then begin using it with the paintbrush and it will make the path and apply the brush in one step. Or you can select a path and then apply a brush to it after the fact. You're going to work through all the different brushes. So a little bit later in the book, they're going to ask you to turn on the art brushes and turn off the calligraphy brushes. And in the art brushes, they actually walk you through getting a new one in the library. The library icon is down at the lower left. If you click on that, you have tons of different libraries. I believe, yes, they're going to have you go artistic and then go into the artistic charcoal pencil. And this is going to have a ton of different brushes that are available to you. Go into the list view here. And they're going to ask you, by the way, when this loads, these are just options. None of them are loaded into your brushes panel until you single click on them over here. And then they're added to your document. Kind of like when you look at paint or swatch colors. Until you click on it, it's not added to your swatch panel. The charcoal is the one that we're going to add. So you can see it got added over here, and then we can close this out. And I believe that is actually the one that we did our water with, not the one I was demoing. So I'll go back down here and try to show you what that looks like. Yep, I have purple water though. Didn't mean to have purple water. No, I have black water. Well, I'm just on a roll here. So follow the book directions. After that, they're going to walk you through the bristle brushes and turning off your art brushes. And you're going to click on this mop brush, whoops, not on the name, I'm sorry, you're going to double click on the icon, thumbnail, and you're going to modify it. You're going to give it a new name, make it a whole new size, and then paint with that brush as well. Another thing you're going to do is, I think with the art brushes, let's go back to that. They're going to have you come into this artboard over here, artboard 2, and select this piece of grouped artwork that is a bunch of different pieces. And we're going to turn this into a custom brush. So again, you need your brush window showing. Mine seems to have gone away. And with some artwork selected, we're going to come down to this Make New Brush icon. And when you click on that, it asks you what kind of brush do you want to make. An art brush is what we're going to be making out of this tree, if I remember correctly. Yep. And we're going to have a chance to name it. I'm going to call it Tree. And then at some point, they're also going to talk about, we're going to change how this actually looks. So here's the piece of art. And by default, it will be stretched along whatever path you assign it to. So in our, I'm going to just try to, I can't. This purple line here is what we're going to apply this tree to. And it's going to stretch from the bottom of the purple line up to the top, which is right up here. And it's going to look exactly like this. And if that's how you want it to work, that's fine. You say okay. And now when we select this path, and in our brush panel, we make sure that we can see our art brushes. Here's our tree art brush. And if I move this away, I can see that that tree was stretched from the top to the bottom. And that's the default behavior. If you want it to stretch in a different way, notice how these trees are all really, they're way up high in the air. They've got huge trunks showing, whereas ours is kind of a traditional tree. If we want to edit that, again, we double click on the tree icon or the thumbnail to get back into this window. And I'm going to turn on the preview so that we can see this, what's happening live over here. The default behavior is to stretch on the stroke. But if we say stretch between guides, we now can see that it starts at 0 and it stretches up to the 7.5 inch mark. But we want it to stretch differently. So if we start moving this number, we can see the little dotted line moving here. In the book, it tells you an exact number to go to, but in real life, you would have to say, this looks right. I want it to stretch all of this for the majority, and then I want this to be the stretched out part, and then this just to be the finishing part. From 5.8 inches to 7.5, I want it to show this. For the remainder of all of that, I want it to stretch here. And again, if we turn on our preview, let me turn that on and off. There we go. We do see it change. Notice how now the trunk of this tree is super long and stretched out, and the green part of the tree starts right up here. So if we were to move this and refresh our preview, come on, why am I not seeing it? Now that figures. Whenever you're giving a live demo, things change. Preview, preview, there we go. Now it's shrunk down. So somewhere, I think 5.8 something is what the book says, somewhere in here. Yep, that looks about right. And we'll say okay. And now it says, okay, do you want to do it just this one time, or do you want to do it to all of the strokes in this document where you've applied the tree? We're going to say apply to strokes. There's only one, and now it's a done deal. The pattern brush, I'm going to go turn off the art brushes, turn off the bristle brushes. I'm also going to be careful not to have anything selected in here, because if you do, it will apply a brush to it. And then the last one you're going to work with is a pattern brush. And as an example, let's just select this green line right here and zoom in. So there's a path. If we were to give the denim seam brush, apply that to this stroke, that's what it looks like. And when we look at anything that we do in the pattern brush, double click on that. This is something you're going to be working with. All you need is this original tile, and Illustrator will automatically generate corner tiles for you, outer corner tiles, inner corner tiles, and if necessary, start and end tiles. So this one, you know, the dashes of the denim would go right off the edge. If you wanted an end file to be applied to this last piece, maybe the stitching would turn. So this is where you can change how your pattern behaves and how spaced out it is and what size and scale it is. So if we pull her down and we turn on our preview, we can see that this got smaller. I'm going to hit cancel. There are other places that you can go and find more borders, decoratives, frames. Let's see. Yeah, you're going to actually use this mahogany pattern, and you're going to apply it to these yellow strokes over here. Obviously, I selected way too much. You need to click down into isolation mode to just get to these yellow strokes, but you're ultimately going to apply this mahogany to it, which that's kind of crazy when I did that, but you get the idea. Let's see. Undo. The other part of this, oh, and let me go to your artboards. You're going to use, so you're going to apply the mahogany pattern to these yellow lines to basically put siding on your house. And then you're going to use this artwork on artboard 3 to actually make a pattern out of yellow lights. And then you're going to assign this one, you can see there's actually a white light with it, as a corner tile, so that when you go back to artboard 1, whoops, and apply that to, wrong, ding ding. The green path here around the doorway actually has corners, so when we apply the pattern that we make with our light bulbs over here, the yellow lights are going to be on the straightaways, and this white light is going to be applied to the corner pieces, and the book will walk you through doing that. And then finally, the last thing is artboard 4 is empty, and you are going to use a new tool called the blob brush. I'm going to close out our brush panel. The blob brush is nested in your paintbrush tools, and it's kind of an interesting tool because I'll just show you. Let's do a fill color here though so we can see it. Typically, if we were to make a check mark with a pen tool, we would get a path. We would get a dot, 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 dot. And then the width of our check mark would be dependent on the stroke on it. Is it a 1-point stroke or a 20-point stroke? How wide is our check? With the blob tool, it actually puts all of our anchor points around the outside of it. So it's not a path on the inside with a stroke. It is a shape. The blob tool makes shapes. So we're going to use the blob tool, and I'm going to make our brush bigger, and it's going to be a pink color, and we're going to basically make a flower. Doesn't this look like a flower? And then when we're done with it, here's our flower. Notice that there's our anchor points. In conjunction with the blob tool, to clean things up, you'll probably be using the eraser tool. And the eraser tool, I'm going to make my eraser cursor larger. If we had an area that we didn't like, we could erase out of it, and it automatically puts our, fixes our anchor points for us. In the book, you're going to go between the two of them, and you're going to make a pretty flower like this. And then you're going to use the eraser tool to put a hole in it. And then you're going to take this flower back to your main artboard. You're going to plop it on this tree and shrink it down, and then put a bunch of hot pink flowers on here. So that is the crash course 18-minute tutorial from memory without a textbook lecture series by the one and only Brenda. So hopefully this helps. It's really not a hard chapter. It's a lot of fun. Oh, another thing you do is you make a fern over here with a art brush. You make a single path, and it gets filled with this like charcoaly, scratchy thing. That's early in the chapter too. So have some fun with this chapter. Your homework is to show me all of your awesome talents and have fun with these brushes. So you're going to find a photograph that you want to work with and think about subject matter that's going to work. So think about textures, maybe a landscape picture painting, or animals with fur and hair and fluff. Make great examples. And you're going to bring that in as a template layer. Please remember how to do that. If you don't remember how to do a template layer, you're going to need to do some looking in your book or Googling it, because when I open your layer panel, the bottom layer that I see should not be a real photo sitting there in full brightness. It should say template, and it should be kind of grayed out, and then a blank layer on top of it is where you start drawing all of your artwork. So you're going to find the picture of your choice and you're going to make a really cool painting out of it. In Blackboard, let's see if I can get to that learning plan. I have some examples from previous years, and here's an example of what one student did once. This is the template layer. So this is the JPEG or the photo that they found and wanted to work with. And then remember how brushes work are they're just applied to a path. So when I go into outline mode for actual Illustrator file, this is what I see. It's very simple and clean. The stroke, or the brush rather, is applied to these strokes and paths. And this is what they did with a variety of different sizes and colors and types of paintbrushes or art brushes or scatter brushes or whatever. She made this. Here's another example. This is the template layer. See over here how it says template tiger.jpg, and all of their artwork is on top of it. This is exactly what I should see when I look at yours. Also, make sure that your artboard fits the size of your graphic. Don't just automatically start with an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, if you will, or artboard, and then throw on a 5 by 5 photo. If that's how it ends up filling your artboard, go to the artboard tool, which this is a still picture, but here's your artboard tool. Click on that and then drag the handles of your artboard in so that it matches your graphic. The artboard is what prints, so we don't want a bunch of white space around it. So here's the template. This is what I see in Illustrator when I turn on outline view. Each one of these strokes or paths has a brush attached to it. Here's their layers again, I can see over here. And here's the final product, which is really very fun. And another one where he did a little of traditional fills on Illustrator and then used some brush strokes. This doesn't have as much effort on it, and quite honestly that's part of this too, but it's a really nice example. So this one is your basic shapes in outline mode with fills. So he did his template layer is the lion dude. In outline mode, he did these shapes and filled them with solid colors. So this was filled with dark brown, a more red brown, a tan. And then he did a whole other layer of just brush strokes. And he went on and with different brushes, sizes, and colors, created the mane. So again, this whole part is not scribbled in with a bunch of brush strokes. That's the wrong way to work with brushes. It is a solid fill in the outline mode. But these pieces right here, anywhere you see a squiggle on this layer, is an actual path or stroke with a brush applied to it to give it this artistic look. So again, your brush project is down here. Make sure that you do embed a template layer. I do need to change this because you guys obviously don't need to print a color copy or your artwork because this is online. So I'll take that off, but I should be able to turn off all the layers but the template layer and see the original picture that you were working with. For you guys, for online class, this is going to be due by the start of class in 2 weeks. Don't compare notes with my in-person class because they are getting the majority of our next class period as work time, and theirs is going to be due at noon a week earlier than you. So always look at Blackboard and trust Blackboard. So any questions, please let me know and have fun with this.